Happy Saturday. It's Saturday. Welcome to Whole Circle Studio Live. We'll wait to see if anyone is able to join us today. We'll do a little bit of chit chat while we're waiting.
All right.
It's the last week of August.
Oh, crap. I keep forgetting. I feel like we still got another week of August.
No, we have a couple of days.
I think it's because August is like a long month.
Not long enough.
No.
I'm sad summer's leaving us anyways. So it was a busy, kind of crazy week. Well, first of all, we'll get the weather chat out of the way. We had some tornadoes come through, not here, but the next town over.
Up that way.
Right basically over our vet hospital, where we take veterinarian hospital, where we take Casey. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be biking up there tomorrow, so I'll see what kind of mess there is.
So it's kind of a mess here in Connecticut. We're okay. We had really wicked winds for about 15 minutes. So I'm sure that's where the tornado was coming through to the right of us. While we're waiting for some other people to join us, I see a couple of people are joining. Welcome. So today it's raining. It's been a while. I'm going to stay off the computer today, and I am going to be sewing all day today. Pretty excited. I started early for me this morning. So I was at the machine all morning, and I'm going to, after this, probably eat some lunch and then head back up there.
Power through.
So I'm working on some prototypes or some new patterns and new stuff I have up my sleeve, which I'm pretty excited about.
And I get to give my opinion.
And I get to decide if I listen or not, but I usually do. What else has been going on this week? It was a busy week. Been taking some more photos of some new projects I've been making with my apple turnover pattern that's going to be releasing in 2 weeks. You may remember that from earlier this summer. I was giving some sneak peeks. So I think next week we'll talk about apple turnover, since the following week it'll be available. And I'm pretty pleased with it, if I do say so myself. I think it's going to be a good fall project, and I've been making some things other than quilts with it that I'm hoping will inspire others, and I'll be sharing those.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Why don't we wait till next week? That way I'll keep people coming back for more. And so, and then the last thing that happened there was a lot of things, but the last big thing in the studio that happened this week is that I did a webinar for the Modern Quilt Guild all about the basics of English paper piecing, EPP. And it was a lot of fun. We had, I think, close to 200 people join in live. Wow. Oh, you didn't know that, did you? Maybe it was 150 to 200.
Still, I mean, that's much bigger than you've presented to before through Zoom.
No, I've done that before.
That big?
Yeah.
On Zoom?
Yeah, and it was a webinar. And so that was pretty exciting, really, really well. It was a combination of slides, me live, some demos. And it was a lot of fun. And so it was all recorded for members of the Modern Quilt Guild. So if you're a member of the Modern Quilt Guild, you can go on their website, log in, go to webinars, and you can check out the my whole recording that I did. We did a lot of Q&A at the end, which was awesome. And then there's a downloadable PDF that I made for members as well. So that's all up on the website. And
Polly says hi.
Oh, hey, Polly.
And
Ellen. Hey, Polly and Ellen. Glad you can join us. So let's get started. So for those of you who don't know us, I am Sherry Cifaldi-Moral of Whole Circle Studio. I'm a designer, a quilt pattern publisher, an educator, amongst a bunch of other things, also a quilter. This is my husband, Jason, who is the behind the scenes person, sometimes in front of the scenes person of Whole Circle Studio Live. This week, he was my video editor. We'll talk about that probably next week as well.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. And so we're broadcasting here from our home studio just outside New Haven, Connecticut. We're here every or most Saturdays, except if we're not in the studio, Saturdays, noon Eastern time, talking about what's happening in the studio and also just quilting tips and general quilting stuff. And sometimes you get a little bit of extra sprinkled in. So thanks for being here live with us, or if you're watching the recording. So this week, I also wanted to talk about my newsletter, which goes out every other Thursday, went out this past Thursday. If you don't subscribe, please do so. You can go to my website, wholecirclestudio.com, and hit subscribe. This week, I shared kind of was a little bit vulnerable.
Oops.
Yeah, just three. I have more, believe it or not, of my quilting mistakes. So one of the things we talked about, or I talked about, was just general piecing blunders, which happen to all of us. Sometimes we go with it. Sometimes we get the seam ripper out. It happens. The other thing was fairly unique, at least to me. It involved optical brighteners. So if you read the story, I'm going to relive this. It was not a good week.
The stress was through the roof.
Well, let me say why it was.
What are we going to do? Do we need to redo the whole thing?
We, meaning me.
Well, yeah. Well, the stress is reflected over.
It is. So a couple of years ago, I was commissioned by my local arts council to make a quilt. The whole story is on the blog, so go to the blog if you want the whole story. And sort of long story short, as I was quilting, something wackadoo was coming off of my machine, some residual oil or something, oil and lint, we're not quite sure. And so it was on some white fabric in the quilt. So I've done this before. I've used a mild laundry detergent and kind of worked out by hand the spot. And I've done it before, no problem. Did it this time, let it lay overnight. In the morning, I noticed those spots were gone, but there were areas that were like fluorescent white. Yes. So it was white fabric and it was fluorescent.
And it was worse when you put it in the sunlight because optical brightener. Yeah.
So I was really freaking out because I had a pretty tight deadline to get this quilt done. And we were researching it, and that's when why don't you talk about optical brighteners?
So apparently people like their whites white and their colors bright, right? Isn't that the slogan that the soap manufacturers put onto their laundry detergent? Mm-hmm. So they've come up with this chemical formulation in most laundry detergents called optical brighteners. And it really does make a difference when UV light hits the fabric that's been washed with with optical brightener detergent.
I think in the past our detergent did not have optical brighteners, and then suddenly, suddenly it had optical brightners.
We had picked up a different brand. Usually I had gone with the free and clear. Maybe they didn't have it that day, and I just grabbed the other 1 gallon jug. But yeah, when you only treat a spot with detergent that's got an optical brightener in it, it literally glows compared to everything else on the fabric.
And I didn't mind the glow, but I minded that there were spots of the glow. So it was a pretty tight turnaround. It was a weekend, I remember. We took the weekend and kind of were thinking about what to do. Do I make it again? I really didn't have time to make it again. And honestly, I didn't want to make it again. It was so
lots of stress.
Over the weekend, we decided that the best game plan would be on Monday for me to basically optical brighten the entire white background. And it was a lot of background. So again, you can go check out on my blog, the photos.
60 by 60 quilt?
Yeah, with a lot of negative space.
I kind of like how much negative space there is on this one.
Yeah, maybe it was more. So I set it up I figured, well, if I did it for just those spots, if I kind of did the same thing to the whole background, it would even out. And so I did it on a test piece first, a test piece of fabric, and it seemed like on that test piece it would work. So we set it up on our front porch. It was like October, so it was kind of not cold, but it wasn't warm. And so I was chilly. I put gloves on since I'm now like handling so much detergent all day. And it pretty much took all day. And I basically gave the same amount of pressure and kind of scrubbing that I did to those individual spots to the whole background. So it looked definitely, I could tell it was evening out. And then I gave it one good wash after, and fingers crossed, in the end, it looked awesome. And the white was definitely brighter, which I didn't mind. So that was a big uh-oh. And from now on, we only allow
non-optical brightener.
So yeah.
And if you ever want to look at the detergent bottles, look at them. And some will say no optical brighteners on them. Usually it's 7th generation, or if you've got a generic brand, I know Costco, their Kirkland brand has their regular, but then they also have their, what they call free and clear. Yeah, and I don't even trust the generic brands now, even if we buy the generic brands for our detergent, for our clothes. Yeah. I have a bottle of 7th generation, which I completely trust, that I only use for quilts. So that was a big blunder. The other it was like,
whoever thought.
Yeah.
And then the one we wanted to talk about today, the quilting mistake, is actually behind us. Again, there's photos of it on the website. Like I said, I talked a little bit more about it. So if you want to see that for details, go to the website, or go to the blog, sorry. So this was the last quilt that I ever quilted on the floor, on my hands and knees, actually in this room.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm glad those days are over.
So before, and I'll talk about how I'll give you
the whole basting. We could talk about that for a whole session, just basting and.
So it was with this quilt that I learned that taking the extra time to baste and baste well resolves a lot of issues. So when I was quilting this quilt, I typically start in the middle, which I did here. I was getting so many puckers and pleats because the basting just wasn't even, and mostly because I'm crawling around the floor. I was spending time, but I also probably wasn't spending as much time as I should have because it's not comfortable basting on the floor. This room is the only room that we have with wood floors that's sort of big enough for a quilt, and it's not very big. It basically just fits the quilt, and it's just really hard to get everything lined up. I know some people spray baste. I don't really like spray basting. I feel like I have to do it outside just because I don't want things aerosol in the air, and it's just for me it's messy. It doesn't work. So I really love pin basting. So this was the last time I basted on the floor. After this quilt, I said there's got to be a better way, and I started experimenting, and I discovered a way to do it on a table. So you're standing. You're not crawling around on knees. And I have a whole tutorial on that, and it's helped a lot of people I know. Yeah. So after this wraps up, I'll put the link to that in the comments below. So anyways, this quilt wasn't as well basted as it should have been. And because of that, I started getting lots of sort of bunching of the layers and pleats and puckers, which are more visible on the back at this point than on the front. And it was miserable. And I knew I should have stopped. And I was like, nope, I'm just going to power through. I think the thought of taking out stitches wasn't a big deal, the quilting, but rebasting this, I was just like, I can't. But I should have, but I didn't. And so I finished the whole thing. And then I looked at it and I was really unhappy with the pleats. I can't say pleats today. Pleats.
Well,
pleats
we're gonna have pizza for lunch, and that's
pleats. I keep saying pleats and puckers. So I put it away for a week or two, kind of like, okay, maybe if I just give myself some distance, I'll be okay with it. And I really wasn't. This was back in 2015. 2015 that I did this quilt. I did realize that most of the pleats and puckers were happening for whatever reason where around sort of this area. And I know you're not super, super close to it right now, but you're probably like, well, what pleats and puckers? And that's because I figured out a way to cover up pleats and puckers. So it doesn't always work this method for every quilt. But for this, I noticed because it was happening mostly where the orange and the white were, this green bias tape strip was not part of the original quilt. I actually quilted it. The original quilt just had orange and then white. So I actually was like, you know what? I'm going to try covering up those imperfections that are driving me crazy. So again, I made some bias tape from the green. The green shows up in other places too. And I just covered it up and I hand appliqued on that bias tape. And then I just did a little bit of quilting over it. And it's still not perfect, but I was able to live with it and it made me a lot happier. So
came out really good.
Good basting, sort of lessons learned was good basting leads to better quilting. And if your quilting isn't perfect, then maybe there's a way you can cover it up. Doesn't always work, but in this case, I feel like it did. So, and I was super glad that I did that. This quilt actually went on and was exhibited at QuiltCon 2017, I think. It was a couple of years ago. So that was one of my big quilting mistakes. And again, it just kind of changed. I'm glad I made that mistake because it changed my world for how I baste, and now I'm able to share it with others. So again, I'll put that link in the comments below.
So the other mistake that we've kind of breezed by, we got the mistake quilt there.
Oh yeah, I think we showed this a couple of months ago.
Oh,
yeah, and again, we've all been there. I think we've all been there.
You know,
I was so excited to make this first sample quilt of my 6-foot ruler. And after it was all quilted, I realized that these sections were upside down. It should be like that. But I just lived with it. It's fine. I wound up remaking it. I had to anyways just to test the pattern. So now I have sort of a special edition one. What?
It is a special edition.
Special edition one. Did someone else pop out and say hi?
Yep, Allison.
Oh, hey, Allison. How are you? So that's this week. That's sort of what's been going on this week and some of lessons learned this week.
Yeah.
If you've made, I've also shared it on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, my quilting mistakes. And I asked anyone else if they wanted to make some confessions. So if anyone's out there and wants to make some quilting confessions, either put it in the live chat now, or you could put it in the comments below. We've all been there. We've all done things. We learn from our mistakes. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't, and we make them again, and that's okay too. But I also feel like quilts are also handmade. As long as the mistake, every time you see it, doesn't drive you crazy, it's not a bad thing. Quilts are handmade. They shouldn't be perfect.
And sometimes you got to step away for a little while.
Yeah.
There's been projects around this house that I could point out the flaw because it drove me nuts for a month after I made the mistake. But
yeah, same thing with
years on now, it's fine. I barely see it.
Yeah, same thing with quilts. So
don't forget.
Yeah, so that's been what's been going on this week. We also registration for double friendship knots, my double friendships knots class, the live online class, which will be starting in 2 weeks at the beginning of September, is still open. There's still a few spots left. I'm super excited about it. It's a class. If you don't know about what the heck I'm talking about, go back to last week's Whole Circle Studio Live. It'll be a live Zoom class open to the general quilting community, making my double friendship knots quilt, where we'll be learning how to combine foundation paper piecing and applique. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super excited about it. We have people from all over the world registered, literally
on the other side
world.
of the
UK,
world.
a lot of Americans, but someone from Kuwait, someone from England. I'm really, really excited. We all get to see each other and share, and I'll be there walking people through. So if that's something you're interested in, please go ahead and register. You could find that information, shop.wholecirclestudio.com. You can see more information about it and see registration. Or go back and watch last week's video. We talked all about the class. Super excited about that. And then just a reminder, if you're watching and you like this, please hit subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Subscribe on YouTube. You will get, actually, I don't think YouTube notifies people anymore. I think they changed something. But
things in the cloud change every day.
I've
had a bad week with the cloud. I have a personal grudge against the cloud this week, but
do you have anything else, any other grievances you'd like to get out this week before we're wrapping up? Let's go all negative. Anything else you'd like? He never complains. So anything else you'd like to grieve?
No, I'm good.
Okay, excellent.
I'll stop there.
So, anyways, so thank you for joining us. I hope you guys have some time this weekend or this week to sew or quilt, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.